Welcome to Author Update. I'm Thomas Umstadt Jr.
And I'm Jonathan Scherger, and we've got a packed episode today that could impact your writing career in ways you haven't even thought of yet. The Anthropic settlement website is live, and authors are finally getting answers about whether they're in this massive class action. But here's the million-dollar question nobody's talking about. Do your agents get a cut of your settlement? We'll break down what this means for your bottom line. Plus, the government shutdown just threw a wrench into every author's copyright plans. But don't panic. The copyright office closure might actually be less scary than you think, and we'll tell you what you need to do right now to protect your work. And hold on to your manuscripts, because AI just leveled up in a big way. Sora 2 isn't just making funny videos anymore. It could completely transform how you market your books. The future of book marketing just got very, very interesting because we're talking about technology that could put you in scenes with your own book covers. Also, if you think you own your Audible audiobooks, well, Audible has a few thoughts about that, and we'll see what the lawyers have to say. So smash that like button for us, subscribe for yourself, and ring that bell for America. Because today's episode, America is packed with updates that could save you money, protect your rights, and maybe even revolutionize your author business. Let's dive in with our first story. The Anthropic settlement class action lawsuit website is up. The website is anthropicCopyrightSettlement.com. That is anthropicCopyrightSettlement.com. It's now fully operational, has a searchable works list and claims form. Before you go spending your winnings, okay, keep in mind there's no final approval yet, but with the release of this full book list, we'll at least let you know if you're in the class or not. Thomas, what's your thoughts on that?
So this is the only search engine that matters. So whatever you saw from Authors Guild or New York Times or any of the other websites, they don't matter. This is the one that matters because this is the authoritative one from the court itself. So these kinds of websites are very common in class action lawsuits. One correction I would like to say on this is that it's very unlikely that these earnings are tax-free. So sometimes when you get money from a court case, it is tax-free, but it tends to be like if there's been pain and suffering or emotional harm, and it's not always tax-free. And it looks like you're probably going to have to pay taxes on your Anthropic winnings, but check with your CPA because, you know, who knows? You're like, hey, it is, I had pain and suffering, and maybe your CPA can make a portion of that. One big question, and I don't know if we have a good answer to it, but I'm curious to hear what y'all think in the chat, is should agents get a cut? Now, legally, I think it comes down to how the contract is worded, although practically, I think it comes down to who gets the check. So if Anthropic cuts a check to your publisher, and then your publisher issues you half of that money, it's very likely that they will cut off the 15% for your agent. So like I said last week, there's a lot of piglets at the trough. And so your 3,000 may end up being closer to 1,000 per book. But I know authors who have 20, 30, 40 books in this class, and that is potentially a lot of money. So traditionally published authors have been following this very closely. You don't have to be traditionally published to be eligible, but you do have to have had a book that was notable enough for Anthropic to train on, and you have to have registered your copyright. And speaking of class action lawsuits, we have another class action lawsuit to cover. Jonathan?
Audible. So on August 28th, a couple of plaintiffs registered a class action lawsuit against Amazon's Audible because they are saying that Audible claims that you are purchasing the audiobook from them, but in the terms of service, you're actually only getting the license. The consumers are actually receiving a limited, non-exclusive, non-transferable license to access the audiobooks, which Audible can revoke at any time. This is not the same as purchasing an audiobook. So this is kind of what's underlying the class action lawsuit. It's just the filing. Nothing has happened yet. It's exciting to hear about, but keep in mind this could take a while to unravel, and we'll see where it goes from there. If you're watching this video, make sure you like and subscribe, mash the button. A little bit of housekeeping. You'll notice that our thumbnail has us in a couple of Starship Troopers suits. For those of you that guessed that correctly, yes, that was Starship Troopers. We're going to pattern the thumbnails that we're doing after the Zeitgeist topic, which we are now doing at the end of each video since they are proving so popular. Well, we'll discuss something about American culture, whether it's from books or movies or TV shows, and how it relates to how authors should be addressing their tactical approach to what books they write.
And we're not going to do any hard news after the Zeitgeist story. So if you don't care for the Zeitgeist topic and you don't want to stick around, you're not going to miss out on anything. Now, we're talking about the importance of registering your copyright, and there's been some drama over copyrights because the United States Copyright Office is closed because the government has been shut down. Now we say closed here with really
closed.
Big, yeah. So
the government shut down. I mean, 70% of the government is still operating. Okay, the government website for the Copyright Office is still functional. You're still able to register your copyright through that website. If you're showing up in person to do your copyright at the Copyright Office, that's not going to work anymore.
Now, to be clear, the website still allows you to submit your copyright, but they're not going to issue the copyright.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
Until the government reopens. But, and this is very important, you still want to submit your copyright, even though the Copyright Office is closed, because you'll still get that timestamp.
Yep. You'll be backdated.
When it comes to statutory damages, which is what's you need for things like this Anthropic case and any other big cases moving forward, when you register your copyright, it's really important, because if the copyright is not registered fast enough, you're not eligible for statutory damages, if I understand this correctly. So in reality, for authors, particularly indie authors who file their own copyrights electronically, and pretty much everyone does it electronically now, this is actually a non-story, because the website you were using is still the website that you use now. It still works. And for all intents and purposes, it works just the way it used to. It's just that the government is going to be slower than the government already is. But this is not like you need the paperwork to get back to you really quickly. So this is not something to panic about. I will say that the reason the government is closed is because the Democrats are using the filibuster to block the budget bill from going through. And this is a little bugaboo of mine. We've got to get rid of the filibuster to restore balance between the branches of government, because neither the executive branch nor the judicial branch requires 60% vote. And so by the legislative branch hamstringing themselves with this 60% threshold, more and more of the decision making is being moved to the other two branches, and it's putting our whole government out of balance. So our congressmen and senators need to find their courage and actually take responsibility for actually running the government and get rid of the filibuster, rather than just shuffling everything off to the other branches of government. End of rant.
Hey, that was a short one.
Although this actually connects with a rant we did last week. So if those of y'all watching last week, we were talking about first aid and medical misinformation that authors sometimes include in their books. And I threatened to create a medical fact checker. And I did indeed.
We follow through on our threats around here.
So what's interesting about this is it doesn't just check your first aid scenes or your medical scenes, but it also checks anytime somebody has trauma. So if somebody gets into a fight, it will help you accurately describe the effects that person has. So if you've never been punched in the face, you may portray that incorrectly. So you could have someone punch you in the face so you could write that scene better. Or you could use the medical fact checker and save yourself from getting punched in the face.
Show up at the novel marketing conference. Pitch? I'll punch you in the face. You'll find out.
I don't know if Texas is a mutual combat state where I can agree to that. But my recommendation is not to have someone punch you in the face, or for you to get into a car accident or get shot or whatever it is you're doing to your poor characters in your book. But instead, use the medical fact checker to help accurately convey this. And I even added a mode where it'll note things that are fantastic, right? So if somebody casts a healing spell and somebody gets better, it's like aware that fantasy worlds can exist.
Otherwise it'd be like, nuh-uh.
And it also can handle historical stuff. So if you have a physician using leeches in your ancient Roman story, it will adapt for that as well. In fact, it will help you find first aid anachronisms. So if you have somebody in 1890s using antibiotics, it'll get after you for that. So it's actually a really cool tool. If you're a patron, you can use it for free at patrontoolbox.com. If you're not a patron, you can become a patron for the low price of $10. And you'll get this and the other 50, 60 plus patron tools.
Next frontier on AI, Sora 2, and what that could mean for book marketing. So Joanna Penn sent Thomas an article by Joe Lamba. I do not know how to say that. Lamba de Java. Just about how Sora 2.
I was going to read this line, but if you want to try to take that name, you're
No,
it's all for
fine.
you, buddy.
I'm like so expendable. It's okay. About how Sora 2 and ChatGPT e-commerce will change how people shop. So at first glance, when you look at Sora 2, I mean,
so I got Sora 2 today, and I'm actually going to be giving away a Sora 2 activation code to one person who's here live if they leave a comment saying, please. So just post a comment saying, I want a code, and I'll pick somebody randomly. And I'll also pick somebody from the replay. So if you don't win live, you can try again. Once the replay starts, leave a comment saying, I want a code. Sora 2 is OpenAI's new social network, but it's also like a TikTok clone. So if you're ever swiping on TikTok and you're ever wishing, you know what would make this better? For it to all be AI slop. But what it does is you can give it permission to use your face. You can actually put yourself into a scene of your book, and you can describe the scene. Just type it out. I'm riding a dragon, and the dragon has blue scales, and it's flying over a desert, and it will put you riding the dragon and it will do the whole scene. And it's kind of a fun toy to play with. And this article that Joanna sent me was somebody kind of asking the question, okay, what's the next step? Because right now it's in toy mode. You have to have a code to get in. It's invite only, which is why, right, post I want a code in the comments, either live or in the replay. But eventually this is going to be used for all kinds of things. And one of the things that this Joe Lamdebjiva pointed out.
Wow, I did better than you did.
in the article was people will be using tools like this and seeing themselves using a product, right? Seeing themselves in a video wearing a sweater or wearing that cool watch or holding the book. So, because one of the things they pointed out is ChatGPT is really good at high consideration purchases. If you're researching which laptop model to get and you want to know the technical details, differences between this model and this model, it's really good at helping you do that research. But it's not very good at impulse buys. And impulse buys tend to be more on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and just browsing Amazon. And this new social network that they're building is meant to be kind of enable that impulse buy. And it will enable you as an advertiser, as an author, potentially to target readers more directly. So you know how it's like Captain Crunch, oops, all berries. This is TikTok, but it's oops, all AI slop. But it's AI slop
no
that
one
you
saw
can
that
create.
coming.
The big question I have in terms of will this social network take off comes down to user retention. When people get access, they get their code and they start using Sora 2. And they start swiping up on videos, will they come back? Right? Because everyone's going to want to put themselves in a scene or put somebody. You can also set the privacy levels where your friends can put you in scenes or even that your face is available to the public. I wouldn't recommend that for a variety of reasons.
This is going to be abused. Don't do that.
It's really interesting some of the ways people are abusing. I tried to make a video of Sam Altman on top of the skyscraper being shot at with bullets and like dodging them in slow motion like in the Matrix and making them tennis balls instead of bullets. So, but what's interesting is that this will be combined where people can shop right there in the app. Because the other big news this week is that ChatGPT is starting to experiment with checking out in ChatGPT um, itself. Now, I've seen a lot of headlines and a lot of hype, and I spent 30 minutes today trying to buy something inside of ChatGPT. I was trying to buy one of Jonathan's books. Initially, didn't work. And then I was like, well, it's just Etsy. So I went to Kelly Jo Wilson's Etsy and tried to buy something. It's like, oh, it's only certain people on Etsy. I'm like, oh, okay. So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
actually live.
I did some research if like I could get the integration to work, and like there's no integration. I can't. Shopify doesn't have this for me yet.
It doesn't have it yet, but in the next few weeks, the
Right.
Etsy will get rolled out to more accounts. The Shopify will get for real turned on because they already announced that it's been turned on, and you can actually buy and check out right there in ChatGPT. And this is something we're going to follow really closely because this could become a really powerful advertising tool, and there will be some advantage to being kind of an early adopter. And you could use Sora to, for free, make a
Yeah.
promo for your book. That's really cool, and maybe it could go viral. So do post I want a code. If you want a code, just post once, please. I'll at some point pick somebody, and we'll have our winner. And then I'll pick somebody after a few days for the replay, probably early next week. So if you're watching the replay, post I want a code in the chat, and I will give you a code. My one other thought was I was also playing with Rufus to see, because Rufus is Amazon's AI, because Amazon's not going to integrate with ChatGPT. They want you to use their AI instead. And Rufus has gotten better from when I tried it a few months ago, but it's still not very good.
Yeah.
And Amazon is going to need to up their game because OpenAI could potentially eat their lunch. Fortunately for Amazon, they're part owners of Claude. They're part owners of Anthropic. So at some point, I think they may just swap over.
Sure.
And have Anthropic power Rufus, and then Rufus will get really good.
Keep in mind, this wouldn't just be a marketing tactic. This could be a main line of income if they continue to develop it the way they are. Because if people are going to shop through ChatGPT, like they're just asking it questions. You know how the shift from Google has already happened? If people shift over to ChatGPT and are like, give me my next book to read because they don't want to go looking for it on Amazon themselves, then this could be a main line of discoverability. So just keep in mind, keep watching it. We're going to keep watching it because I have my eye on this one pretty closely. This could also contribute to a shift away from Amazon as the main source of buying books. If Shopify can integrate with ChatGPT and then people start looking for books through ChatGPT, then it becomes more viable to have a web store that integrates with the AI search tool. So you keep an eye on this. Like, this is a tactical shift. This is similar to like drone warfare coming in.
Doug is saying that they should just buy Anthropic, and they should have just bought Anthropic because Anthropic just did a Series F round. I did a quick search on this, and their current valuation is $183 billion, which is a crazy amount of money. And even for a company like Amazon, that's more than you can just open up your wallet and buy.
Yeah.
So some quick news. I've lowered the price for authormedia.social down to $9. There was some confusion since the patron toolbox is $10 and the one-time price to get onto authormedia.social was $10. I had one person who signed up for authormedia.social and was confused why they didn't have access to the toolbox. The purpose of the authormedia.social fee was not for people to pay it. It was to keep spammers out, because there's many ways to get in for free. And those include being a student of Obscure No More, being a patron, taking the 5-year plan, or attending the Novel Marketing Conference. So a lot of things get you into authormedia.social for free. Speaking of the Novel Marketing Conference, there's only 9 tickets left. So we only have 9 standard tickets left. So if you've been thinking about signing up, there's a very, very good chance that it will sell out this year, which will be our first year to legit sell out. Last year, we got right up to the last.
It was like right there.
So close. This year we are tracking ahead of where we were last year, and then we don't have any more seats than we had last year.
All right, a couple of new AI models for everyone. Claude
Yay!
4.
I love AI.
Yay. Claude 4.5 Sonnet and Grok 4 Fast, which is faster. They represent the latest leaps in large language models. Anthropic dropped Claude 4.5 Sonnet on September 30th, 2025, positioning it as their most intelligent model to date. Now, Claude is generally considered to be the best AI when it comes to writing. So if you're using AI to augment writing your books, then this is an obvious upgrade for you. Nerdy Novelist has he's a YouTube channel guy. It's
a great channel. If you want to learn how to write a book using AI, I don't cover that, but Nerdy Novelist, that's all he covers.
Yeah, that's all he does
on his channel, and he does great breakdowns of AI models for writing specifically.
So apparently this new one is a very solid upgrade from older sonnets, especially for outlines, revisions, content creation. If you're prioritizing affordability, the results are reliable for writing, but if you're going to go for more premium creative needs, you still want to stick with Opus. Thomas, do you have any thoughts about this particular one?
So Pseudowrite has already added support for Claude 4.5. Claude is the go-to model for people who write books using AI. So it's generally considered to be the best tool for writing. It's not the best tool for other use cases. It's not very good for research. It's not very good for any sort of like compendium tasks or manuscript analysis tasks,
right,
because its context window is really small. But it's really good at following instructions, and it's really good at writing. And so, like, for instance, I shifted the chapterizer, which takes a rough a transcript or rough dictation, just raw dictation. It fixes the homophones and fixes the punctuation. And just today I switched that from Claude 4.0 to Claude 4.5. I tweaked the prompt a little bit, and now it's like perfect every time in the tests that we're running, and it preserves author notes. So I was working with somebody who's here live. She was giving me her rough transcriptions, and she would leave, like, in parentheses, notes for herself to work on as she's revising that chapter. And those notes were getting cut, and now it's not. So not only is it preserving her wording, but fixing the basic dictation issues, but now it's preserving her notes, which makes the chapterizer a much, much better tool. I've swapped out over a dozen other Patron Toolbox tools to upgrade them to Claude 4.5. So a lot of the Patron Toolbox tools are going to be better now. But that 200,000 token context window is a real blocker, which leads us to the other new model, which is Grok 4 Fast. So Grok 4 Fast is not quite as smart as Grok 4. It's like 90% as smart as Grok 4, but
Claude 4.
No, Grok 4. So Grok 4 Fast is I'm not sure how it compares with Claude 4.5 in terms of intelligence. They're both really, really smart. But what's magical about Grok 4 Fast is that it has a 2 million token context window.
That's so big.
Which is 2 times bigger than Gemini, which had a 1 million context window, which was 5 times bigger than Claude, which has only 200,000 tokens. So with Grok 4 Fast, you could load up every book in your series into the context window, and then load up your most recent book and have it checked for continuity errors. And Grok 4 Fast be like, oh, well, on page 30 in book 2, such and such minor character had red hair, and in your current book, you have her described as having blonde hair. And I might build a Patron Toolbox tool to check for those continuity errors if I can find a way to do it.
Which I got in trouble writing a story one time because I was writing a novella about this character that I had already written a novel on, and I had the wrong eye. Like, he's missing an eye, and I had the wrong one in the novella, and I had someone point it out to me. I'm like, oh, crud! So I can imagine this thing being extremely useful.
Yeah. Justin is pointing out that Grok 4 Fast has been having a lot of outages. The reason is that it's become the #1 and #2 most popular AI model on OpenRouter. So OpenRouter is the tool that software developers use for code. and they tend to always use whatever is the best model, and they'll
Mhm.
all just switch to whatever they think the best model is. And so it's kind of a blessing and a curse to be the best model, because there's like tens of thousands of developers, hundreds of thousands of developers that will just hammer your servers. And so once the developer community picks you, you just hold on for dear life.
Oh no.
So it was Claude for a while, but Claude has fallen behind in coding. And the big thing holding Claude back is that context window. So
Yeah.
for authors doing anything with continuity, context window is really important. And for developers dealing with large code bases, context window is really important. And this 2 million context window is kind of mind breaking.
Yeah.
And it's really industry shattering. And XAI to have come from last place a year ago to first place now just underscores the truism that you never bet against Elon Musk. Just don't do it. His ability to hire good people and do amazing things with technology is just quite remarkable. We're living through some really interesting times.
There
Speaking
is
of
a new toolbox tool.
speaking of
And
AI tools,
I'm excited about this one because this is one that I actually asked Thomas for, because this was something I was going through. I was doing research for the year, and Thomas has put together the Event Finder. Showing up to an author event is easy. Knowing there's an author event in your area in time to be able to apply for a space at that convention, at that market, at that con, whatever it is, that's a bigger deal. So now this tool will scan for upcoming events coming near you that fit your genre and your audience. It could be romance convention, fantasy con, a local craft fair, a major book festival. This tool will bring the most relevant options to you. So instead of searching on Google, going book conventions near me in this time window, let Event Finder uncover the best opportunities for you so that you can do your face-to-face sales, which have the highest conversion rate in my experience. I've got like a 70% shot of selling a book if I get to talk to you. So this is a fantastic tool.
Yeah, Jeremiah Friedley is one of the first people to try it out. Posted it on DAW Social. He's like, "This is so cool! It totally derailed my morning routine as I looked over ideas." So it will give you a short list of events, and then it will give you kind of a detailed analysis of each event, why it thinks it's a good fit for your book, based off of your genre and your target audience. So if you're targeting homeschoolers, it will give you a different list of events than if you're targeting gun enthusiasts. That will give you a different list than if you're targeting like romance fans. And it's really good. And it will even give you like a breakdown of the price, and sometimes even a like strategy for approaching this event, because some events are easier to get into than others. So
Yes.
could you do this on your own with Google? Yes you could. Would that take you forever? Yes it will. Google's not good at this kind of searching. So I encourage you to give it a shot. Do give me feedback with all of these patron tools. I have the privacy settings set to maximum, which means I can't see what you post and I can't see what responses you get, which means if it's not working for you, the only way I can know that it's not working, or if it's not working quite right and you want it tweaked, you've got to let me know. This is so important, because if you don't let me know, I won't know, and it will just stay broken for everybody else. So I want that feedback from you. I've opted for high privacy over high like uptime. So if you have any ideas for other tools for me to make, just let me know. Oh, one real quick before we go on to our controversial story. Cosmark, which is a based AI based off of Alexander McCree's building a conservative AI. We're running an experimental version of that in the patron toolbox, and some people are wanting a theology checker. And this is actually shockingly good for checking the theology of your book. So you just upload your book and say, "I'm a Southern Baptist. Please review the theology of this manuscript." And it does a really, really good job, and it cites its sources in the Bible. So feel free. It's a cool use of Cosmark that I had was not available previously because I didn't have uploads enabled. So now Cosmark can read manuscripts if you want it to.
This is such a fun story. I've been tracking it for like 5 days now, and it's like 30 years old, but it's reignited this past week over on #BookTwit, which is just the perfect way to describe that. Piracy is back on the menu. X has been at war this past week, not on whether books being pirated is legal or not, or should be legal, not on how to pirate books effectively, which I got to watch that one too, but on whether or not pirating books is moral. The argument being made by the pro-pirates is that book purchases are the domain of the privileged, and not everyone has access to libraries, KU, or other free sources of books. Of course, the anti-pirates are on the side of the authors. 80% of authors are under the poverty level in terms of book earnings. I would say it's higher than that.
Yeah, that's what's
quite honestly. I pulled that figure from somewhere because someone was talking about it. I'm like, well, I think you need
there
to check
is
your
no
sources,
way
buddy.
20% of authors are making over the poverty level,
No, there's
especially if
no
you
way.
include all of like aspirational authors and all the traditionally published
Right.
authors. And
But it is estimated that publishers are losing as many as 30% of their earnings to book piracy. That number could be even higher for indies who lack the resources to shut book pirating sites down or just aren't getting reported on. They're just taking the hit. It's and that doesn't even take into account potential losses on a series being canceled because a book wasn't profitable because it was pirated so much. So that
I was there in the beginning, Jonathan. I have fought the piracy battles. I was there on the Linux trenches in 2005. So there's a lot to break down here. The first thing is I want to push back on this losing 30% of earnings. This is really disingenuous the way that these statistics are used, because the music industry did the same kind of argumentation back 10, 15 years ago. And they would say, look, 1 million people have downloaded this Metallica album on Napster, and that album is $10. So we've lost $10 million worth of sales. And that is false, because that assumes that all 10 million people would have purchased that
correct
at full price, and pirating it was a one-for-one alternative, when in reality most people who pirate something would never have been a customer. And you can prove this actually with basic economics. There's this demand curve where as the price of something goes up, the demand for that thing goes down, and it like creates this little X. And everybody who goes through business school studies, you want to try to find the dot where those lines meet. That's where you're maximizing your revenue. And what ended up solving it for the music industry was actually making music easier and cheaper. And so Spotify basically killed the piracy sites. It wasn't about lawsuits. It wasn't about shutting them down. It's about realizing how price sensitive the market is. But there's a deeper question here, and that is, for all of time until 1782, 1783, whenever the Constitution was convened, up until that point, and I think it originated the United States Constitution, there was no real concept of intellectual property. You didn't have, the way you kept your intellectual property safe was by keeping it secret. And so you'd have these secret scientific inventions. And I think it was Thomas Jefferson who had this idea of having patents and copyrights. The idea may have been thrown around in Europe before that, but I think we were the first one to really implement it in an open way. And the argument in the Constitution, it's one of the few passages where the law is actually explained with the rationale in the Constitution. And the phrasing in the Constitution, if I remember correctly, is to advance the useful arts and sciences. And the law originally was you had a copyright for 14 years, and then you could file to extend it for an additional 7 years. And then after 21 years, your book was released into the public domain for anybody to mix and remix and reprint and what have you. So you had a 21-year monopoly on the economic exploitation of your story, and then it was released into the public domain. And while that's still the process for patents, it is not the process for copyrights. Copyrights got broken by this one evil corporation known as Disney. They came up with what they called the Mickey Mouse Preservation Act, and every 10 years they would extend the copyright for another 10 years until now, something like 75 years past the life of the author. which means that remixing has completely gone away as a source of culture to reference itself. And which really is kind of dysfunctional and unhealthy for culture. And it gives a lot of cultural touchstones. It puts them in the hands of just a handful of decision makers. And culture's never been that way before. And it's not even that way now, because right now people are still breaking and violating copyright all the time on Facebook and X and on TikTok. And what's ironic and funny is that Disney didn't create any original stories. Walt Disney did not write Snow White or Sleeping Beauty.
Gasp.
Those were remixes of older stories.
Gasp. I know. Lilo and Stitch, though.
They eventually would make original stuff, but Walt Disney himself was not known for having original ideas. And yet it was the Disney Corporation that kept modifying the copyright law. And so piracy is this like countervailing force to allow for remixing and what have you. And what's happened is copyright law is not really something that serves authors individually. There's not even any lawyers really that focus on it because there's so little money working for authors. The only copyright lawyers that exist, they're all working as on staff. Most of them are working on staff for either Disney or for Warner Brothers or for Sony or like maybe 5 or 10 other big corporations. It's not a tool for individuals. It is a tool for big corporations to crush individuals. And until you've had an encounter with a copyright tool, you don't realize just how crushing this law is for regular people. Now, is breaking the law with piracy the answer? I don't think so. I remember being really convicted on this, and I like deleted every song I had gotten from Napster when I was a kid. So
you were a pirate in your youth?
I don't know if I ever used Napster, but I did use, I think, LimeWire.
LimeWire.
I don't remember.
I remember.
I was big in that world, though. I was in the Linux community where they had a really different view of intellectual property, and I still lean that way. My book, if you buy a copy and you flip open to the copyright page, it's not copyrighted. I license it under the Creative Commons, which is a some rights reserved rather than an all rights reserved. Which means that even if I had registered my copyright, I don't think I would have been eligible for this settlement. Although I don't think they would have looked closely enough at it. So Meg McDonald's asking about Steamboat Willie. Steamboat Willie is now in the public domain because Disney finally stopped being able to pass the Mickey Mouse Preservation Act. And all the terrible things that they said were going to happen to Mickey Mouse, most of those things have not happened. And so the Mickey Mouse Preservation Acts were built on lies. It was all about preserving Disney's income. And it's really unfortunate because Disney now has become a very evil corporation, and it's supported almost entirely off of works that the current people in the company didn't make, right? They're making money off of Aladdin and off of Snow White and off of Princess and off of Toy Story. And the people who made Toy Story are no longer at Disney. And now different people are making money off of the work that these older people did. And it would be, I think, much better for society if Disney had to make things that people actually liked rather than making money off of things that their ancestors liked.
Yes.
Or that their ancestors made. So
I just got a notification. Somehow we were demonetized.
Really?
No.
That was fast.
Yeah, I know. It's those big ears, man. They'll catch that stuff.
So I have been following the current. Can you give? Is it how am I fitting inside of the current debate? Because I have not been following the debate on X on this.
So very few people are taking your take. The libertarian take on this is extremely small. Most people seem to be treating it as, well, I don't have money and I shouldn't be kept from reading books because I don't have money. So basically, I deserve a right to consume the content, and I shouldn't be denied that because I don't have resources.
I'm rolling my eyes here.
These people, I'm an Intel guy, so I went and checked sources, okay? So the people that said that, I clicked on their profile pictures, and I just clicked on profile pictures. I didn't even go through their publicly accessible photo libraries, which I can find. No, they all have tattoos, hair extensions. So clearly disposable income isn't the problem. It's just a justification that they're using for that. So I know everyone in the chat stream right now is screaming about libraries. Yes.
And this whole like, I don't have access to a library. It's like, yes, you do.
Yeah, you do.
I find that to be very uncompelling. What they're really saying is, I don't value books. And I think this is why it's so triggering for authors, because it's very hard for authors to hear readers say, I don't value the book that you created. I think it should be real, because they're measuring value with dollars. And that's the argument that it's like, I'm all for authors having an exclusive right to exploit their intellectual property for 14 years with a 7-year extension. I think Thomas Jefferson's structure on that was really good. And then after 21 years, you need to write something new.
Write something new.
Yeah. We would have the conclusion to the Game of Thrones series if we didn't have our terrible copyright laws. If George R. R. Martin had to write something new in order to continue getting paid, we'd have an update here. All right. Y'all ready for Zeitgeist?
Zeitgeist.
Post in the chat if you're ready for Zeitgeist. It's now time to shift from talking about breaking news to talking about bigger trends that are easy to overlook. But if you understand how culture is changing, you can skate to where the puck is headed. So this is a historic moment, because up to this point, I have brought all of the Zeitgeist stories, but this Zeitgeist story has been brought by none other than Jonathan Sugar, which means that it's probably going to be about the Marines.
Prepare to have your Geist Zeited.
All right. So what is our Zeitgeist story this week, Jonathan?
This past week, there was kind of a seminal moment in the United States military. We haven't seen something like this for 20 years. First, you guys know that the Department of Defense was renamed to the Department of War, reflecting the outlook on it by the new, well, he was SecDef at the time, Secretary of Defense. Now he is SecWar, Secretary of War. SecWar Pete Hegseth summoned all the generals and senior NCOs from across the world to come to Quantico, Virginia, and sit down in an auditorium, and he gave them a speech. And you can find this speech on YouTube. It's about 49 minutes long.
I watched the whole thing, and I was eating popcorn
it several times.
and
it's so good.
pumping my fist.
So good. I rewatched it again to see the expressions of people in the crowd. Basically, this speech covered 10 different changes that SecWar is making to the military. Overall, it means the days of DEI are gone. We are no longer, and as he said, we are no longer the Department of Woke. We are the Department of War. Physical standards have been reset to age-normed, gender-neutral tests. Every uniformed member, from the newest private to the highest general, is to take a PT test and a height weight check twice a year. And I realize most of you didn't realize that wasn't happening for generals. Once you hit a certain rank, you show up to the scale and be like, put these numbers in, and then you walk off. Now SecWar is like, get on the scale.
Him fat shaming all of the generals to their faces.
Oh my goodness.
I've been wanting to hear Jonathan's take, because my assumption is every enlisted man was like stood up and started cheering, because people like to see their leaders held to the same standards they're held to. The whole rules for thee but not for me is not morale inspiring. But this shift, I suspect, played really well with the E5s and below.
There's a couple of other things that were brought up. Now, this was the fun stuff, right? It's like, no more fat generals, no more fat admirals, stuff like, no more dudes in dresses, which is something that he said, okay? So that's something that's easy to focus on because it's funny and fun, okay? But really the big thing here was that zero defect culture is going away. Zero defect culture means you can't ever make a mistake. If you make a mistake that goes into paperwork, your career is destroyed, because then someone else who has zero defect will be elevated above you. And so in this officer corps, it's impossible to get ahead unless you play it safe, because it produces risk-averse policies. So instead of a captain who will, take his company out on an exploratory patrol and check for bad guys in a certain area. Instead, he'll hold them back until he's told to do so by someone else that he can shift the blame on, because he does not want to have a black mark in his record if he takes too many casualties. Something that could mark your record is also suicides, which is not really anything you can control at all unless you have an extraordinarily toxic unit that you're running. This zero defect culture is extremely toxic to military culture because it makes all of our officers who are supposed to be commanding us into risky situations. It means that they no longer have the safety to do so. There's no safety net. There's no forgiveness. There's nothing. So now we have a bunch of checklists.
Yeah, let me jump in with an example of a general who would have failed under the previous system. And it was a man by the name of George Washington. Back when he was a colonel in the Continental Army, he marched his unit out into the middle of nowhere and built Fort Necessity. And I know a lot about this because as a homeschool kid, I may have built a model of Fort Necessity out of Legos.
Of course you did.
For a school project. And the mistake that Colonel Washington made was when he was clearing the land for Fort Necessity, so they're chopping down all these trees, he only cleared enough trees to build the fort, but he didn't clear trees all the way out to musket range. And so when the French and Indians attacked, they were able to take cover from the tree line while they were attacking the fort, thereby thwarting the whole point of building a fort in the first place, which is to have cover yourself while denying it to the enemy. Now, here's the thing. George Washington ended up being a fantastic general. And if they had screened him out because he made that one mistake, we probably wouldn't be a country right now. He was uniquely equipped and empowered to be exactly the general we needed for the Revolutionary War, which was fought 10 or 15 years later.
So now we're looking at a shift back to practical results only. In the military, the term uses lethality. Every MOS or every job in the armed forces is to contribute to the mission's accomplishment and the lethality of the combat arms branch. In Sec War's speech, he talked about the focus is now on destroying the enemy. It is no longer a place for DEI candidates to be promoted based on unique points like first this, first that. Now it's to be the best. And if you are the best, it doesn't matter what color you are, what gender you are, whatever it is, you are to be elevated to an appropriate station so that we can have the best and most lethal United States military possible. Okay. Now, how does this apply to authors? This is a huge cultural shift. You have to understand the officer corps is formed of college graduates. So all of them are filtered into the military from college. And so this is where a lot of problems come from, is because our universities haven't been fantastic at producing qualified individuals. So many stories that authors work on come from the American military tradition. And right now we have a huge surge in recruitment because people love Sec War Pete Hegseth right now. There's a huge surge in recruitment, which means there's a huge surge in recruits who appreciate military stories and their families who appreciate military stories. So you need to have now an understanding of the way the military culture is transforming because you could be interacting with people who are now in the military, and it's a new military.
And more fundamentally, as we've been talking about the turnings, this is a kind of inevitable outcome of the turning that we're in, which is bad times make strong men, right? And what Pete Hegseth is advocating for is basically the military becoming strong.
Yes.
In a literal sense. It's like, no, you have to be able to do the push-ups, even if you're a general. You have to be able to do
in the speech.
Yeah.
Do hard PT every day. And then in basic training, we're getting rid of hazing, to a reasonable extent. Racism and sexual harassment are still illegal. But now drill instructors can swear. Did you know that it was illegal for drill instructors to swear at their recruits for a period of time? It's like, what? They can't do bunk tossing anymore. Well, now they can, and now they can put hands on recruits, which I'm telling you, some recruit platoon woke up this morning and got reintroduced to the new military.
They're suddenly becoming strongmen. It's interesting because I was reading some reports from World War II about the training that they went through and the boot camps that they went through, and they're drill instructors back then were very mean, very aggressive. You can watch Band of Brothers for an account of this. But the troops going through basic did not resent their instructors for
No.
yelling at them
We brag about it.
because they knew they were going to war. And they would rather suffer in basic and have everybody around them suffer in basic than to go and face the Germans or the Japanese surrounded by a whole bunch of people who did not suffer in basic and couldn't make it, right? Because it's the people that difficult times weed out that can't make it through basic that you don't want as the weak link in your unit. And in the 101st Airborne, part of the appeal, which is what the Band of Brothers TV show focused on. If you get the DVDs, you'll see like interviews with the actual men who served. They interviewed a lot of them. And one of the reasons some of those guys volunteered for the 101st Airborne rather than being regular infantry is because they wanted the extra money. But a lot of them volunteered because they wanted to be around a more elite unit because they thought they would have higher survivability.
Right.
Because they wanted to be around experts and warriors. And this standard of, would you want this for your son? Would you want this for your grandson that Hegseth was pointing out is a whole kind of realignment. Because it used to be, we didn't want to offend the enemy, right? That's why we renamed it from Department of War to Department of Defense. The Korean War wasn't a war. It was a police action, right? It was the era of weak men. And the era of weak men has come to an end. And the era of offensive men, of strong men, men who impose their will on others has come. And this, I think, is really important for protagonists because we're already seeing this in romantasy, where women are longing for the men who impose their will on others style male character, right? That's kind of the whole point of these dark fantasies. And they take it to an extreme, a very unhealthy and disordered extreme. But it gives you a sense of what the longing is for. And we're seeing this in other genres as well. Seth Ring, who I've read a lot of his books, his protagonists are very much the man who imposes his will on others style protagonists. Very, very strong male characters, very dominant male characters. Now he's writing for a male audience, but it's that same kind of thing of like people are wanting to read about strong men who aren't afraid to be offensive. And we're also seeing this in the political discourse right now, where people are being portrayed in sombreros, right? The sombrero memes will stop once the government has reopened. And it's like, it used to be, it's like, oh, that's offensive. You're offending me. And now it's like, I don't really care, Margaret, right? The era of strong men has come. And it's interesting because we're seeing this transformation happening in both political parties. So the weak leaders are getting pushed out, and the Republicans did this first, but the Democrats are in the process of doing this as well. So Zoran Mandani, who's running and likely going to win for mayor, was the strongest man in the race, and so his politics are, he's a socialist, right? He's basically a communist, but he's the strongest man. And we see the same thing with Gavin Newsom, who is very much a chameleon, and he's whatever the current times require. And so the face that he's now wearing is the strong man who gets into fights and pokes fun. And he's constantly like posting memes on X using AI to mock political figures, which is, I believe, in clear violation of a law that he signed just like 2 years ago or last year, that you're not allowed to do that. But he's very much now presenting himself as a strong man because he believes that that's what the electorate wants. And so if you have a kind of a weak, effeminate, unassuming, inoffensive male characters in your novels, you may find that those don't resonate like they did, right? So it's not the time of Mr. Banks learning to be weak. It's now the time of Davy Crockett, who must be strong because the times are difficult, right? Mr. Banks could be weak because he was living in a very safe time. And
you also have Karate Kid stories where someone who is weak is transformed by someone who is strong into someone who is strong. And those are going to do very well also. Like I know so many guys, when you join the military, particularly the Marine, I'll reserve it to the Marine Corps, okay? Because people will join the other branches for different reasons, okay? They will join for college or healthcare. The Marine Corps is too freaking hard, and it advertises itself as too freaking hard to go in for benefits, okay? The pay is just not good enough. But the way you're being rewarded is in self-respect, in confidence, and knowing that you did it. And so actually in the Marine Corps, the harder training is and the worse you get treated, the more of a selling point that becomes. So,
Yeah,
you can tell
people
the story about the time your drill instructor threw you into a washing machine because you were a bag of garbage and he mistook you for, a bag of filthy laundry, which they use a different term.
yeah, people actually want to apply for the Navy SEALs, which has the most miserable training in the Navy. Now, going back to what I was saying earlier, a lot of people are pointing out that Zoran Mondani couldn't bench press very much. So he did this big thing. They were working out, and it's in the middle of a street, and he's trying to bench press, and he couldn't. And I think this really supports my argument, because how much a politician could bench press was
Never used to
not
matter.
something that voters cared about in 2018. But now they really do, right? RFK doing his bench pressing in the middle of the street in New York, very similar situation to Zoran Mondani, became like a key selling point. He's like, look, here I am. I am a strong man, physically strong. Now, the kind of strength I'm talking about, it's not necessarily physical strength, although it is that in some cases, but it's more of what Democrat voters are wanting is strong candidates who will stand up to Trump and not give him an inch, right? That's why the government is shut down right now, because they're unwilling to compromise, even to not stop filibustering a bill that basically changes nothing, right? Just a clean continuing resolution that was the last numbers, but today, even that they're not doing, because the voters are wanting that strength. They're wanting that fight. They're wanting that grit. And I think they're wanting that in the books that they read as well.
Yeah. So, and this is on both sides, okay? Whether you're on the conservative or you're on the liberal side, your heroes need to have a line they will not allow others to cross. And then they need to have the capacity to prevent that line from being crossed, whether it's physically, magically, socially, whatever it is. Your hero, your protagonist needs to have the this far, no further kind of mentality.
Your protagonist needs to impose his will in on somebody or on some situation in the very first pages. Like, you need to demonstrate this is a strong protagonist. Yes, he's going to go through this evolution. He's going to, have various crises, but if he's weak and lame, and kind of learns to become strong, and that's kind of the arc of the story, you've got to really compensate for his weak and lameness in your marketing, and really say, hey, he's not going to be this weak, lame character the whole book. Otherwise, I think readers are going to lose interest, unlike before. This is not the time to write a book like Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
I was just thinking that. I was about to say, this is not the time.
That is a third turning book.
Because
and we're now in the fourth turning.
Yeah, that's when strong people have become the bad guys, right? Because they've had strength and now they're using it to oppress and abuse. Okay. Now people are actually looking for strength to break the abusive system. And that's what they're looking for. Okay, Justin, dude. All right. I can't tell you how many stories I know of guys who joined the Marine Corps because of a girl and they became strong. so girls are making us stronger.
But I will say, in defense of Johnny Rico, he still showed strength standing up to his dad right at the very beginning. So he had that more. So while he didn't have physical strength, he did show a moral strength to buck against everything that he was brought up to believe. And this is actually a really good example for your story. So let's say your story is about a man becoming physically strong. You need to show him being strong morally. Or let's say the story is about a man becoming morally strong. You need to show him early being strong physically, right?
Yes.
He needs to have some kind of strength that makes
theme
him an
of strength
character early. Otherwise, you're not going to have an appealing character. And readers, if it's your first book of yours that they're reading, they're not going to give you patience for the beautification of an irritating protagonist.
Correct.
They need to fall in love with your protagonist pretty early on.
So Captain America. Okay, remember the movie Captain America?
Great
Weak kid, strong soul.
Yes.
His morals were extremely strong. And then the theme of the thing was when you got the Vita Meta Vegemin, whatever they put into him. Uh, when he
Vegemite.
got whatever. When he got that injected into him, it took what was inside and made it appear on the outside. So he became a strong warrior for the rights of others based off of his earlier strength that he showed. He just lacked the physicality for it. And they spent the first third of that movie showing how strong he was in his soul, so that when he is given the strength and then puts it against Red Skull later on, who takes the exact same thing, then you see the difference between them. And that's a fantastic way of doing that. You can have a physically weak protagonist, but he has to be strong in his morals, soul, whatever.
Now contrast this with Iron Man, who's a strong character intellectually, but a weak character morally.
Yes.
And every Iron Man story is about Tony Stark learning to gain moral strength, right? So the first one, it's him learning how to sacrifice and become a hero. And it's kind of that same arc, actually. He goes through a very similar arc in every film.
Thor starts out being morally weak, or maturity weak. He's immature. He's very strong. He does have a good sense of right and wrong. He's just not good at listening to his dad, hearing what his dad has to say.
Yeah.
And so the end of the movie fixes that, because he gets his humility. And that's when he gets his strength back, and he's able to be the hero that Asgard and that town in New Mexico needed.
Yeah, so Thor's character is about him learning to gain wisdom. And you'll notice that Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, those characters have stood the test of time, and they're still appealing today. Whereas Shang-Chi, you haven't thought about him in forever, right?
Nah.
And he doesn't have that same kind of appeal because he doesn't go through that same kind of arc. And so as you're putting together characters, decide on purpose, how are they going to be strong and how are they going to be weak? And you can play, and these are three really different examples of three different characters who are strong in very different ways. And then when they come together, it's very interesting, right? Because they're all in the middle of their journey, right? Iron Man's learning to become a hero, and in the first Avengers film, he does the self-sacrifice thing. Thor is learning to become wise, and Captain America is learning to Captain America actually doesn't go through much of an arc.
He holds.
Film. Yeah, he's kind of the core that everything else is orbiting around. And not every character has to go through an arc in every story. But we are in the hard times make strong men era. And this makes people uncomfortable. It makes weak men uncomfortable. And one of the shifts I think we're going to see in corporate America, and we'll close with this, is in weak times, you have lots of committees where decisions are made by consensus. And the companies that are going to win are the companies where strong men or strong leaders are given authority to make decisions without needing consensus from the group. And a good example of this is the Elon Musk companies, right? Why was XAI able to outmaneuver all of the other AI companies in such a short period of time? Because Elon Musk doesn't run his companies with committees. In consensus. He hires the very best people, and he gives them the authority to make decisions, and he gives them freedom to fail. So when they have a rocket that goes up and explodes, they see that as a learning opportunity, and they launch another market, which actually connects with Jonathan's point about this zero defect culture. And because they're iterating so much faster, I saw a stat that something like 80% of all of the kilograms put in space are now delivered on a SpaceX rocket of some kind. So they've now taken 80% market share of space. He did it.
That's pretty cool.
And that's really impressive. And he was winning in electric cars, and his social network is doing well. And so a leader who had the same leadership philosophy was Nebuchadnezzar. And he's the head of gold, right? Described in the Bible. He has this dream where he's the head of gold, the greatest of all the civilizations. And he would give a lot of authority and a lot of power to someone and a lot of leniency to do what they needed to do. But once he decided that they were no good, he would just have them executed, right? He would cover them with gold if they were successful. He'd have them executed if they weren't, but they had all of the authority to make the decisions themselves. And that's the only kind of person who's drawn to that sort of role is a strong man. A weak man wants to hide behind a committee where it's like, well, we don't really, decisions were made. Mistakes were made, right? We don't
Mhm.
know who made the mistakes. They were made by the kind of generic other, and they're hiding behind that committee.
And
The
hear
age
this.
of that is coming to an end.
Everyone hates that and has hated that this whole time. It has never been good. So every time you present that as a villain or as an antagonistic force in your novel, that the bad guy is trying to hide behind something else because he doesn't have the courage and conviction to stand up for his own words, for his own actions or whatever. He's trying to push it off on someone else and trying to weasel out of it. You know, like, this is similar to Wormtongue in Two Towers, where Grima is behind the throne, forcing, enchanting the king to make the policy happen, and then he can blame the king for whatever is going on. It is not until the strong man comes in, Gandalf, who cast out, and they have a full-on bar brawl in there. You just have, the elf, the dwarf, and the man walking around socking dudes in the jaw with their
An
bare
elf, a
hands.
dwarf, and a man walk into a bar.
Exactly. And they're just trucking these guys. It's like, this is so totally cool. And because they tried to disarm them and it didn't matter. And Gandalf still went in and he still freed the king. And that is so important to readers because they are entrapped still in a system that relies on committees and policies and checkboxes. And, well, you said the wrong thing. It got caught on TikTok. You're gone. People are finding out about that with the Charlie Kirk thing. Okay, I'm in favor of free speech. You don't like Charlie Kirk? You can say whatever you want to say, and that's your First Amendment right. Now, I think you're wrong, but you got the right to be wrong. That's why America's cool. And they're getting hammered with a system that's been weaponized against them now. And that no one likes that system. It's not a good system. And so people being able to stand up and back up their own words is a freedom we need back. What are you gonna say, Thomas?
I was just gonna say we are out of time, but I do want to pick a winner. So of the people who are here live, I didn't actually pick a good system for picking a winner, so I just scrolled up and then stopped. And my name.
Ooh, we rouletted it.
I scrolled rouletted it on my phone. Our winner is Kami Tang. So Kami, reach out to me and I will give you your code. If you didn't win, don't worry. As soon as we're done being live, you can leave a regular comment, and everyone who's here live can leave a regular comment, and I will get one of the legit tools for randomly picking a winner for that one. But for the live, I wanted to announce it live, and so Kami is our winner. But don't worry, I'll be giving away another code early next week. So do say, give me a code, post something like that in the chat, and do let us know what you think of this new format with the Zeitgeist at the end, and what you think of our analysis of the Age of the Strong Man. Conan is coming. Conan is coming. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr.
And I'm Jonathan Sugar Jr.
Live long and prosper.